Hey everybody, I'm Nicole Ricci and I'm cruising out, but not on my cruise ship. I'm cruising out on a day boat. So the cruise ship company I'm working for has a sister company, Allen Marine, that does day boats, and they actually take passengers off of larger cruise ships like the Royal Caribbean, Phantom of the Seas, Quantum of the Seas is an example of the ship that we took out today. So I went out on the St. Gregory, which is a day boat that took, I think, about 100 passengers both trips, or maybe it was actually less the first trip, but anyways, we took guests from the Royal Caribbean Quantum of the Seas and took them on like a 3-hour whale watching tour. So we saw some humpback whales, we saw some sea otters, and I got to go out and kind of learn from the naturalist on that boat all day today. I was there for a long time. It was a long day with just those 2 tours. I don't know how they normally do it when there's 3 of them. Anyways, I just wanted to show you all the different wildlife that I saw, and I really was so happy to be out on the water. My boat is still under construction, but hopefully it will be ready soon, and that will be me on the water on my boat. Anyways, check this out. So I ended up working on the day boat 3 days and doing 6 different trips. One of those days I was on the St. Tatiana, where we took passengers off the Quantum of the Seas. I was also on the St. Gregory, where we took passengers off the big Norwegian Bliss. And then I was on the St. Eugene, where we took passengers off of the Silver Muse. And these were tours based out of Sitka, where I was spending some time as my boat was getting ready. And this was about a month ago now when I'll be posting this vlog. Anyhow, the boats, I would say, are probably around 75 feet, maybe even 100, and like I said, can fit anywhere between 100, 150 passengers. And I thought I would just kind of give you the little rundown that I would give the passengers as we cruised through Sitka and as we saw the humpbacks, the orcas, the sea otters, the sea lions, all of the marine mammals as we cruised around. So, starting with the humpbacks. Humpback whales are 49 feet in length and can weigh around 35 tons. They have 270 to 400 baleen plates in their mouth, and that's how they eat their food. They also only eat in the summers when they're up here in southeast Alaska. They don't eat when they're migrating or breeding in the winter, and so most of our humpback whales will go down to Hawaii to breed in the winter time. The average humpback eats 1.5 tons per day when they're up here for the summers, and they're eating small fish and krill. And the humpbacks live between 40 and 50 years old on average. They are migratory, like I mentioned, so every winter they're heading down to Hawaii, and every summer they come back up to southeast Alaska. And we see them mostly alone, but here we saw a couple of them swimming together, and we saw those massive fluke tails. There's around 6,000 to 8,000 in the Pacific Ocean, and their main predator is humans. Also, orcas can pack together in pods and take down a humpback. We also saw stellar sea lions, which are often found hauled out. They are in the eared seal family, so they have external ear flaps. They have long flippers and hind flippers, and they're found along the Pacific Rim from Japan to California, Canada, and all the way up to Alaska. The males are double in size, and they keep growing until they're around 12 years old. Sea lions consume their prey whole while they're underwater, so they're just swimming around and eating mainly fish. They live between 20 and 30 years old, and they can swim 75 miles non-stop without hauling out. But the majority of the time we see them, they are hauled out on whether a little buoy like this or on big rocky shores. They can dive 1,500 feet, and they can stay underwater for 16 minutes. And their population has been fairly stable, and I believe that males can get up to 1,200 pounds, so they're fairly large, and then females half that size. Also, talking to you a little bit about this area that we're in, that we were boating around. So that was the Gulf of Alaska, Sitka Sound, which is the North Pacific Ocean. And Sitka is the only city with open access to the Pacific Ocean, whereas a lot of our other cities are in the inside passage, they're interior. Sitka is the only one with that outside access. So barrier islands come into play here. Cruise-Off Island is a barrier island to Sitka, and what it does is it protects against the major ocean swells coming to shore. And on Cruise-Off Island is Mount Edgecombe, a once dormant volcano that volcanologists have recently come just when I was coming to Alaska in April and May, because there were some small earthquakes on the base of the volcano. So they have now changed its category to historically active based off of these recent earthquakes, and they don't believe it is soon to erupt, but they are monitoring it. So we do have a volcano here in Sitka. I can also talk a little bit about what carved this area. So we talked about Mount Edgecombe, so there was some volcanic influence on the geography of this region, and also glacial movement. So as the glaciers recede, islands cut straight down. So this area was formed by the glaciers as they moved and created these channels. I didn't really get too much footage of bald eagles, but I did want to mention that Alaska supports 1/4 of all U.S. bald eagles. They can be 14 pounds and have a wingspan of 7 feet. And when they get wet, they air out their feathers, so you see them kind of in the sun laying out. There are 30,000 bald eagles in southeast Alaska. Bald eagles mate for life, and they'll come back to that same nest year after year, so it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and there's a bald eagle nest in Sitka that's 6 feet in diameter. I wanted to mention the drastic tide difference from low tide to high tide in all of Alaska. In Sitka, that's a 14-foot tidal difference on average. We can see a black lichen that marks the tidal line where high tide is, which is a relationship between an algae and a fungus. So the fungus keeps its structure, the algae provides the food, and there's also green algae and seaweed underneath the water. We have light green mosses hanging from the trees. We have witch's hair and old man's beard, which are other types of lichens. And we can see as we get close to the islands those trees. Sitka, there are 2 boats per person, and there's also 1 slip per person on all of their docks. So there are so many boats. Sitka is known for fishing. We also saw some sea otters, and we've seen those floating alone or in groups called rafts. And they kind of just float along the water on their back. Sometimes you'll see them in these kelp beds so they can hold on and kind of all stay together. In 1742, they were almost wiped out by the Russians as they were hunting them for their sea otter pelts. But in 1867 is when the population really was reduced. But in 1911, there was no incentive to hunt because it was no longer profitable, because there were only around 2,000 sea otters in southeast Alaska. And that's also when they put in a protection act to ban hunting. In 1970, the population has now grown up to 100,000, which originally was 150,000 before the Russians, but it has grown and gotten back up there. Sea otters are around 4.5 feet in length and 60 to 90 pounds. They have webbed hind feet, and they can spend their entire life in the water. They never really need to go ashore, so they eat, sleep, produce, everything in the water. They spend much of their day grooming themselves because their fur is what keeps them warm. So unlike our other marine mammals that have blubber, the sea otters have fur. They have around they have 1 million hair follicles per square inch of hide. So 1 million hair follicles, and that's what keeps them warm. So they spend a lot of time grooming that to make sure it's clean and keeps them warm. And they live between 15 and 20 years. They are also a keystone species because sea otters are eating sea urchins, and with too many sea urchins in the water, they will eat kelp forests, and then they will destroy all the kelp forests. So it's really important that sea otters are eating sea urchins, keeping those in check, so then we can still have these kelp forests. Another interesting thing about sea otters is they have a little pouch. So they have a little pouch actually on each of their sides underneath their armpits, and they hold a rock in there, and that's what they use to break open those sea urchins and clams to eat. I also talked about how they have all that fur. So they have the densest fur in all of the animal kingdom. They are also the smallest member of the marine mammal family and the largest member of the weasel family. Baby sea otters weigh around 30 pounds, and their moms help to maintain their coats for the first 6 months of their life so they can stay warm and be protected against the cold, cold water. They need to have groomed fur just like the moms and the dads. We also got to see orcas, so they have those big black dorsal fins that can be up to 5 feet in length. They are the largest member of the dolphin family and are around 23 to 27 feet and about 1,300 pounds. The males are larger than the females, and that they are in oceans and seas. They are broken into 3 groups based off of their movement patterns. So we have offshore orcas, we have transient and residential. They also have different diets. They eat only marine mammals, and some of them only fish. The residents will only eat fish. They live between 50 and 80 years, and humans are their only predator. So they are a true apex predator at the top of their food chain. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this vlog and getting to see some humpback whales, orcas, stellar sea lions, and sea otters. I'll see you next time. Bye!